Honorable members, I would like to announce that in terms of Rule 233, that the Council has received the following petitions. Petitions seeking NCOP's assistance in fulfilling commitments made by various ministers in 2012 during the Taking Parliament to the People's Program. Petition calling upon the NCOP's assistance in resolving the issue of land ownership in Alexandra Township, Gauteng Province. Petition calling on the NCOP's assistance on the rejection of Mr. Wanile Lawrence Tabu's application for special pension by the Special Pension Appeal Board. Petition calling upon the NCOP's assistance on alleged illegal occupation of RDP houses or RDP house belonging to Mr. Pumlani Dolbati in the township of Mtanzani, Eastern Cape Province. Therefore, refer all these petitions to the committee for consideration. Thank you very much. Does any member wish to give a notice of a motion? Honorable Groenewald.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. On behalf of the DA, I hereby wish to move a notice of a motion that Council take note that the DA welcomes the reviewing of funding the two universities in the Eastern Cape, Walter Sisulu and the University of Fort Hare. These two universities were amongst historical disadvantaged institutions. The DA also wants to see that the two universities meet the required criteria, which include submitting a business plan, outlining systems to ensure financial sustainability, and reducing overheads and personnel costs. I so move.
Point of order.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Chair. I thought that you were saying notices of motion, not motions without notice. I think the Honourable Member is making a notice without motion, a motion without notice. In my understanding.
Was it a notice of a motion or notice motion?
Notice of a motion, Chairperson.
As a notice of a motion. Honourable Smith.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honourable Chairperson, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to move a motion with notice, that this House debates its next sitting. The potential of freshwater aquaculture in South Africa as a rural development tool to stimulate the rural economy. Freshwater aquaculture is a highly underexplored and a huge markets exist within our inland rural communities, that freshwater aquaculture can contribute to the alleviation of poverty and unemployment through creation of primary as well as secondary job opportunities. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I take it that those are the only two. We will then proceed to having motions without notices. Okay, Honourable Khai, you may proceed.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Chairperson. On behalf of the African National Congress, I hereby move without notice that the Council notes and pay heartfelt sympathy to the passing of Mr. Saba Mbikane, a radio Mhlobo broadcaster who died of a motorbike accident. Also know that Zau Zau, as he was affectionately known by listeners, was not just a Satma Awards winner, an entertainer, a Maskandi singer, an advocate, but also groomed and coordinated multiples of different traditional music groups and competitions. Further notes that he championed the respect and installation of self-respect of culture to diverse population groups of South Africa. And through his taxi and farming businesses, He demonstrated and promoted self-sufficiency and sustenance to our people. Deepest condolences to his mother and family. Rest in peace, Zawa, DJ Dozabandwa, DJ Manapke. The nation will always miss you. I so move.
Is there any objection to the motion? Therefore, the motion shall be agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. Honorable Van Lingen.
Honourable Chairperson, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to table a motion without notice on the recent irregular program changes in the National Council of Provinces. We condemn the last-minute program change made to include a debate on the fiscal framework policy in today's plenary without the approval of the programming committee, and which is in total conflict with today's order paper. The manner in which this was communicated to us via an SMS yesterday, and the fact that the various attempts to seek answers from the Honourable Chairperson as the Chairperson of the Programming Committee and the Honourable Chief Whip only elicited as a response that there was a breakdown in communication with a feeble apology. That the DA is strongly opposed to the ad hoc manner in which the program is changed at the last minute, and in contravention with how decisions are made in the programming committee. There should not be a debate today, and we should follow the program as approved on the 19th of February, where the report will be tabled for 10 minutes, and thereafter the provinces will vote, and then possible declarations can be made. I so move.
Very much. Is there any objection to the motion? In the light of the objection, therefore, the motion shall not be proceeded with, and therefore the motion will now become a notice of a motion. Honorable Kaula.
Honorable Chairperson, on behalf of Inkatha Freedom Party, I move without notice that the House extend its deepest condolences for the untimely death of Mr. Baltaza Mpasobeni Xolani Skakane, who passed away on Friday, the 6th of March 2015 at the age of 44. That we extend condolences to his family, especially his wife and children, his union, and to his community he served with dedication. Mr. Skakane was born in Bulwa by the late Mr. M.M. and Mrs. Madlamini Skakane. He attended his primary education at Mangwaneni Primary School. He proceeded to Ixopo Seminary, where he matriculated. He obtained his teaching diploma and degree at the University of Zululand. He taught at Umsinga High School and became principal of Usizo High School in Umsinga. He became the National Teachers Union Secretary at Umchezi Branch and Secretary of Escort Region. He became a member of NATU Central Executive Board as Vice President in 2009 until his time of passing. Mr. Skakane was a dedicated Christian under the Roman Catholic Church in Umshwati. On the 10th of January, he was ordained by Cardinal Wilfred Napier as the Reverend Deacon in Umshwati. I so move.
Thank you very much. Is there any objection to the motion? The motion shall therefore be agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. Honorable Dlamini.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I hereby move without notice that Council notes that March 8th is the International Women's Day that is used to reflect on the progress made, to call for change, and to celebrate acts of courage and determination from ordinary women who have played an extraordinary role in the history of their countries and communities. Further notes that this year's theme, Empowering Women, Empowering Humanity, Picture It, envisions a world where each woman and girl can exercise her choices, such as participating in politics, getting educated, having an income, and living in societies free from violence and discrimination. Further notes that this year International Women's Day is highlighting the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action a historic roadmap signed by 189 governments 20 years ago that sets the agenda for realizing women's rights. Therefore, congratulates the South African government and the country at large on their progressive agenda of empowering women, and ask government to put mechanisms in place to address the many gaps that they still remains. I so move.
Is there any objection to the motion? Therefore, the motion is agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. Honorable Lord. No. But Lord, it's just that I looked at you. But it's Lord. Yes.
Honourable Chairperson, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby table a motion without notice on the recent fires that raged through the Western Cape Peninsula. We commend the national, provincial and local government to work together on managing this disaster. The provinces that dispatched 250 firefighters to the Western Cape to maintain the fire, the 2,000 ordinary people that all took part in fighting the fire, and every South African who donated food, water, cold drinks to the exhausting firefighters. I so move.
Any objection to the motion? Therefore, the motion is agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. Honorable Mbambo Skakwa.
Mphambo Sibukwana, Honorable Chair. Thank you, Honorable Deputy
I'll get there.
Chairperson. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to move a motion without notice that the NCOP deviated the program during the oversight visit to the My City bus routes in Cape Town. Firstly, the oversight program did not include an address by the City of Cape Town MACO member Brett Heron to the 26 families who are affected by the My City bus route in Plumstead. The families are being consulted by the Mayor and the City of Cape Town. The oversight was specifically meant for MACO member Brett Heron to address the NCOP on the My City bus route and not to call for a public meeting in Plumstead. The ANC used the NCOP program to canvass for votes instead of fulfilling their scheduled obligation to receive a full briefing on the routes and operation of the My City bus system from Khayelitsha to Plumstead. I so move, Deputy Chairperson.
Any objection to the motion? In the light of the objection, the motion shall not be proceeded with and therefore becomes a notice of a motion. Honorable Prince.
Chairperson, on behalf of the African National Congress, I hereby move without notice that the Council notes that the Franshoek Rugby Club was involved in a tragic bus accident in the Franshoek Passion Saturday morning, 7th March. Two further notes that 26 people were injured and that the 3 people, including 2 players and the spectator, sadly lost their lives in the accident. 3 therefore passes our deepest condolences to the families, friends and the colleagues of the affected and commends the Western Province Rugby Football Union for establishing the Franshoek Rugby Disaster Relief Fund to help those affected. I so move.
Any objection to the motion? Therefore, the motion is agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. Honorable Smith.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Chair. Honorable Deputy Chair, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I wish to move a motion without notice that this House notes that the town of Mokopong in Limpopo has a serious water crisis due to dilapidated asbestos pipe water infrastructure. The pipes are very old and burst on a weekly basis. That the pipes are made of asbestos and crumbling, and thus poisoning the entire community of Mokopong with asbestos. That there is a clear indication that stomach and throat cancer cases in Mokopong is drastically on the increase, and that these pipes might be the cause of this. that this House calls on the Minister of Water and Sanitation to immediately investigate this issue and present the relevant select committee with the report by her department on how the intervention is going to be administered. I so move.
Any objection to the motion? Any objection? All right. Therefore, the motion shall not be proceeded with. The motion will therefore be treated as a notice. Order, honorable members. Honorable Isaac.
Thank you, Chairperson. I wish to move a motion without notice. Honorable Chairperson, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to move a motion without notice that the Council takes note that in Emalahleni, Mpumalanga, the Clarinet High School took 18 months longer to build than originally planned. That the school operated since January 2014 without electricity. In 2014, no budget was allocated to this school, resulting in the school having to make debts to operate in 2014 and used the 2015 budget then to pay off the debts of 2014. I further point out that this very school has up to today, Chairperson, not received any textbooks for this year. The school has a library without books, a science lab without equipment, and a computer lab without computers. Honorable Chairperson, let us not pretend that the ANC is doing a sterling job. The ANC should admit that as an organization, it has failed to deliver services to the people of Emalahleni. I so move.
Any objection to the motion? Therefore, the motion shall not be proceeded with, and it shall be treated as a notice of a motion. Honorable Julius.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I move a motion without notice that the reprimand by the chairperson of the NCOP, Honorable Tandi Modise, to NCOP members when presiding over a joint sitting of Parliament on the 12th of February 2015 during the State of the Nation address was uncalled for. The chairperson of the NCOP, whilst presiding over the all MPs, called only on NCOP members to sit down. The chairperson said, members of the NCOP sit down. The only person out of order that time was Honorable Ketty Dlamini, and she was only reprimanded after the chairperson shouted at NCOP delegates twice. Section 45(2) of the Constitution of South Africa provides for all members in joint sittings of Parliament to have the same privileges and immunities. This reprimand was comparable to that of a grade 1 teacher calling order on grade 1 learners. It further potentially amplifies the attitude that NCOP members are not important as National Assembly members in Parliament. I call on the chairperson of the NCOP to refrain from such behavior in future and withdraw this sit-down reprimand unconditionally. I so move, Chair.
Any objection to the motion? In the light of the objection, the motion shall not be proceeded with, and therefore it shall be treated as a notice. Honorable Julius, yours will be treated now as a notice. Honorable Zwane.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. On behalf of the African National Congress, I hereby move without notice that the Council, one, notes with sadness the passing on of Nkululeko Habibi, known as Flaba in Alexander, Johannesburg, in the morning of Monday, the 9th of March. 2, Council also notes that Flaba, as affectionately known, was a leader rapper of the Squatter Camp, a hip-hop music group.
Thirdly, that the council further notes that he was not only a rapper, but also a music producer, and he last produced the album with a famous song, Nayi Nkinga, in December last year, 2014. Lastly, council wishes to convey condolences to his family and friends, and may his soul rest in eternal peace. I so move.
Is there any objection to the motion? In the light of that, the motion shall therefore be agreed to in terms of section 65 of the Constitution. Honorable DBA.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I put this in motion without notice that the House notes that the new 100 megawatt concentrated solar power station was opened near Pofadder in the Namakwa region in Northern Cape on the 2nd of March 2015 by Minister Patel. It is the largest CSP plant in the Southern Hemisphere. The plant is generating energy equivalent to the household consumption of 80,000 families or 400,000 energy users. South Africa now have the largest green economy program on the African continent, and that the Northern Cape is a renewable energy hub of South Africa, and thank the IDC to focus funding in the development of the green economy as a jobs driver in the new growth path. I so move.
Thank you very much. Is there any objection to the motion? Therefore, the motion is agreed to in terms of section 65 of the Constitution. I'm taking the last one, which is Honorable Nyambi. Okay. Therefore, thank you very much. We now come to the motion on the order paper as printed in the name of the Chief Whip. Chief Whip.
Deputy Chair of Council, members of this august House, I hereby move that in terms of Rule 21, subsection 2, and in the interest of enhancing public participation, conducting oversight, and providing a platform for consideration of issues provided for in section 42, subsection 4, and section 72, subsection 1 of the Constitution of the Republic of move that the Council resolves to, from 13th to 17th April 2014, conduct public hearings, hold meetings, conduct oversight visits, and sit in plenary in the province of the Western Cape on 17th April 2015 at 9 hours until the conclusion of business on that day, and to move that the Council knows that the estimated cost of effecting the change in venue and maintaining it for the specified period will be approximately 10 million. I move accordingly, Deputy Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As there's no speakers list, I shall now put the question, and the question is that the motion be agreed to. But before I do that, I need to ascertain as to whether all provincial delegations are present in the House. In accordance with Rule 71, I shall first allow provinces the opportunity to make their declaration of vote if they so wish. Is there any province that wishes to make a declaration of vote? In the absence of any province wishing to make a declaration of vote, we shall now proceed to the voting, with the voting. Eastern Cape?
Eastern Cape in favor.
Free State? Free State?
Free State. Thank you, Deputy Chairperson. Free State is in favor.
Gauteng?
Gauteng supports.
KwaZulu Natal?
KwaZulu Natal, yes, Segela.
Limpopo? Mpumalanga?
Mpumalanga agrees to the motion as tabled.
Northern Cape?
Northern Cape agrees, Chair. Thanks.
Northwest?
Rika Manyali decision, Chair.
Western Cape.
Die Weskaap ondersteun.
All 9 provinces voted in favor. I therefore declare the motion as agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. The Secretary will read the first order of the day.
Consideration of report of Select Committee on Finance, 2015 Fiscal Framework and Revenue Proposals.
Honorable Charles De Beer, you introduce the...
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Deputy Minister.
Just hold, Honorable.
Chairperson, on a point of order, in terms of Rule 144 and 145, the decision of the Programming Committee of 19 February stands. This is not a debate, it is merely the tabling of a report.
Two things. One, I must admit that in terms of the rules, I should have, in the first place, called on the motion that was passed earlier on as being out of order because it was in anticipation of a debate. But I allowed it. Now the member is applying a rule on a very same motion that he passed in the House, which was rejected as a notice of a motion, or a motion without notice. And secondly, this is a matter for the committee, which should have been dealt with at a committee level. The committee should have decided whether if this is going to be a statement or a debate. Ordinarily, any matter that is agreed to at the level of the committee, once it comes to the House, it must be debated. But the committee will then take a decision to say that we shall proceed with this to the House as a statement. Therefore, I will rule that the application and the point of order should not be sustained. I'm not going to sustain it precisely because of the House cannot now be subjected to matters that should have been dealt with at a committee level. And therefore, to ask Honorable De Beer to introduce the debate.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Deputy Minister, Honorable Members, yes.
Is that a point of order?
Yes, Honorable Chair.
Can I hear the
Chair,
point of order?
I would just like to have, on a point of clarity from you as Chairperson, do you say that you do not adhere to the rule that Honorable van Lingen has just said? Because I would like to have that recorded as well.
Honorable Member, I've made a ruling on the matter to say that it does not apply in this instance. Can you continue with the debate, Honorable Member?
Let's try again. Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Deputy Minister, and Honorable Members, on the 2nd of December 2014, the committee program was approved, indicating a debate for today. That committee program was circulated to every member, official member in that committee, and confirmed. So I just want to bring that clarity. Chairperson, Budget 2015 focused to consolidate the public finances in the context of slower growth and rising debt. But Chairperson, a towering leader of our movement, the Honorable Comrade Walter Sisulu wrote, "The story of the struggle is the story of problems arising and problems being overcome. The solutions we adopt are the solutions we ourselves have to implement." The budget refers to that good advice. Through Budget 2015, the economy is being rebalanced for growth, shifting from a growth path reliant on consumption to one led by investment. We are experiencing tough times and have to take responsible decisions. We must get quality expenditure and better value for money. Honorable Chair, the Minister of Finance tabled the 2015 National Budget before Parliament on the 25th of February 2015. After the tabling of the budget and consequent engagement with the Minister of Finance on the 26th of February 2015, The Standing and Select Committees on Finance received inputs from the Parliamentary Budget Office on the 3rd of March, and on the 4th of March held public hearings where 9 stakeholders appeared before us. And Chair, we commend the participants in the public hearings for their contributions. Honourable Chair, the 2015 budget is the toughest since the advent of democracy. How does the economic environment look we operate in? Looking globally, in the 4 months since the tabling of the 2014 MTBBS, the global economy outlook has weakened. The world output has been revised downwards by 0.3% in 2016. World output's growth is projected at 3.5% in 2015 and 3.7% in 2016. Excuse me. If we look domestically, the GDP growth of 2% is projected for 2015, rising to 2.6% in 2016 and 3% in 2017. The immediate priorities are framed by the 9-point plan, as stated in the State of the Nation address, to boost the growth and create jobs, referring to resolving the energy challenge, revitalizing agriculture and agro-processing, adding more value to mineral wealth, implementing the industrial policy action plan, encouraging private investment, moderating workplace conflict, unlocking small business potential, boosting the role of state companies, and then Operation Pakisa. Although corporate balance sheets indicate cash balances of more than 600 billion rand, the private sector growth remains weak. We need a long-term investment commitment by the private sector funds. Looking to the fiscal policy, the counter-cyclical approach has reached its limits. The 2015 budget implements the commitments to narrow the budget deficit, stabilize debt, and begin to rebuild fiscal space. Risks to the fiscal outlook of the medium term, there are 3. Weaker than expected economic growth and electricity shortages. A public sector wage settlement significantly above the CPI inflation. The provisions of additional direct fiscal support, equity injections, or guarantees to public entities. We have to improve the quality of expenditure and get value for money. All hands, Chair, all hands must be on deck. We have to crack down on wasteful, irregular, and fruitless expenditure, enhancing the compliance by all departments to the PFMA and municipalities to the MFMA. Looking at revenue, taxes will be increased by 16.8 billion in 2015-16 financial year. The detail appears in the budget review document. The World Bank Group report of February 2015, Chairperson, indicate that for the fiscal instruments they examined, the South African fiscal system lifted 3.6 million individuals out of poverty. This is remarkable. The results of their research show that South Africa uses its fiscal instruments to effectively reduce market income poverty through a progressive social spending, also in compliance with the Freedom Charter. That's the report of the World Bank. Chairperson, the committees believe that the budget should be more clearly located in terms of the NDP and medium-term strategic framework. The framework for the budget has been provided by the State of the Nation address. The committees need to monitor the implementation of key aspects of the budget in terms of the SONA. A key focus should be the 9-point plan to ignite the economy and create jobs. In the context of the weak global economic outlook and the major economic growth and financial constraints that the country faces, the National Treasury has managed to shape a balanced budget mainly in favor of the poor. Chairperson, I'm going to go straight to the recommendations. At the National Treasury, Chairperson, within a month of the adoption of this report by the House, respond to the submissions made by the 9 stakeholders that appeared before us in the public hearings. That the quality and composition of government spending need to change. National Treasury needs to be effective in this regard, and the committees will monitor this more closely. While the committees acknowledge National Treasury's good work in improving the quality of spending at local government level, more needs to be done in this regard in cooperation with the national and provincial departments of COCTA and the provincial treasuries. National Treasury should do more to ensure that its proposals on cost containment and efficient gains are effectively implemented and should report to the committee on a regular basis. Committee has noted that the state is creating more jobs than the private sector and believe that the state should do more to encourage the private sector to invest in growth and create more jobs. That the Treasury also needs to ensure that the employment tax incentive scheme does not lead to the displacement of established workers. While the committees welcome government's many incentives and other forms of funding to private companies to advance the country's economic growth and job creation goals, they feel that there should be more careful evaluation of the numbers of jobs created through this funding support. National Treasury also preferably together with the Department of Trade and Industry should brief the committees on the overall success of these support programs with a particular emphasis on job creation. That the Treasury through the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Commission and together with other departments need to contribute more to the speedier and more effective implementation of the National Infrastructure Plan. We also welcome the new fiscal package for cities and urges the Treasury to ensure that the funds are effectively used for the correct purposes. Treasury also needs to provide more information on the assumptions on which the revenue proposals are based and their impact, as well as more information on the impact of the budget on the poor. While recognizing the complexities of the issues, the committees believe that the National Treasury and SARS should do more to tackle base erosion and transfer pricing, and the committees will engage with them on a regular basis. Committees noted that PricewaterhouseCoopers concern in the South African Customs Union, South Africa received 70% from the revenue sharing pool in the 2013-14 financial year, instead of at least 80% that it was entitled to. While recognizing South Africa's responsibilities to its neighboring countries, the committees believe consideration needs to be given to reviewing the revenue sharing formula. Chairperson, referring to the World Bank's 2014 report on South Africa entitled Fiscal Policy and Redistribution in an Unequal Society, National Treasury, together with government as a whole, need to look into ways of linking the social grants to forms of self-employment and skills development, and over time wean people away from the grant system into sustainable livelihoods. Chairperson, the committees noted that Eskom is to receive a capital injection of 23 billion rand to be paid in 3 installments, with the first transfer to be made in June 2015. And the Minister of Finance will table an appropriation bill in Parliament to this effect. While recognizing the complexities and sensitivities related to the sale of non-strategic assets, the committees recommend that the Minister should introduce this bill by early May. Also, the development finance institutions need to do more to support small business and cooperatives. The Treasury should also do more to assist the Department of Small Business Development, given the importance of small and medium micro enterprises. Honourable Chairperson, the National Treasury and the Chief Procurement Officer should provide the committee with more information on how the office will work and how the centralized SCM process will be implemented, including how the practical and logistical difficulties will be dealt with. The committees welcome the proposals for centralized procurements, including school textbooks from January 2016. The proposal to centralize school construction and decentralize their maintenance is also welcome. Chairperson, while the committees understand the need for Eskom to charge cost-reflective tariffs, they feel that this should be done in ways that do not disadvantage the poor and needy. Honourable Chairperson, it is our responsibility as members of Parliament to take this budget to our people, in our communities, and to go and explain it to them. What does this mean? Where does they fit in this whole picture? Our responsibility, not that of an official of the department. Why? Because we as members vote on the budget, not officials. And that also refers to municipalities when they explain the municipal budget to their communities. Chair, I hereby move that the House adopts the fiscal report and revenue proposals for 2015. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Order. Honorable Isaac.
Honorable Chairperson, thank you for the opportunity. Colleagues, good afternoon. It's absolutely a pleasure to be here, and it's expected to be heckled by people in trouble. Honorable Chairperson, last week, the Minister Nene, tabled the finance budget to South Africa. I think it's on, Chairperson. In any case, let's get on with the job. Honorable Chairperson, as South Africa, we eagerly awaited reforms that will deal with our most pressing issues. Real issues that deal with the rise of unemployment, cutting wasteful expenditure, and corruption. But all we heard about was tax increases. These tax increases, Chairperson, that will come at an expense to every South African who will have to pay for our government's failures of being unable to steer our economy to a growth path that will one day take South Africans out of poverty and give them the ability to provide for their families. Now, today, we debate the fiscal framework. This is determined by the Minister's decisions during the budget speech and will inform how our economy performs under our economic policies. Honorable Chairperson, it is therefore simple. If there are high tax increases, people will of course spend less money, lowering demand for goods and services and ultimately costing South Africans their jobs. To quantify this, the Minister announced an increase of 1% to every taxpayer's earning more than 181,900 a year. This will affect approximately 3.5 million South Africans. To add to this, the Minister announced the fuel levy will then increase by 80.5 cents per litre, which is a further burden on every South African personally, and to the growth of small businesses, robbing South Africans of the relief that the international oil price has brought, in case Honorable Kathy Dlamini is not up to speed with the newspapers. Every South African chairperson will feel this effect due to the increased transport costs, which places a further burden on small businesses, the main vehicle for job creation. This will impact businesses disproportionately, resulting in a dampening effect on their capacity to create more jobs. The Minister might then say that there is a tax relief for small businesses with a turnover below 335,000 a year. But the increase of the fuel levy directly counteracts this, which will bring about little to no relief to the primary job creators in our economy. It is an insult that the Minister announced during his MTBPS that he will not balance the budget on the backs of the poor. Yet, the current tax increases will only create an environment for more job losses, an increase of unemployment, and the further suffering of our most vulnerable South Africans. What the Minister should have done was to implement a short-term solution to avoid tax increases by cutting the public sector wage bill, which in 2015-2016, Honorable Chairperson, will stand at a staggering 479.5 billion rand. Honorable Chairperson, the crippling issues of corruption, maladministration, together with millions of rand being lost through wasteful expenditure, should have been prioritized in addressing the current fiscal framework. Today, our economy is at a bigger risk than what we had previously. Our economy needs to focus on small business and entrepreneurs. This will in turn employ more people, which will widen our tax base, allowing government then to draw from a larger revenue base instead of raising taxes. The DA, Honourable Chairperson, in its alternative budget, mentioned that it will spend 9.3 billion rand to stimulate and empower small business in 2015 alone. Minister Nene allocated only 3.5 billion over 3 years to focus on mentoring and training, supporting small businesses. The National Development Plan foresees SMMEs creating 90% of the jobs required to meet its objective of 11 million jobs by 2030. Today, an allocation of just over 1 billion a year to support SMMEs is thus not good enough. This could have benefited thousands, if not millions, of the 35% of unemployed South Africans. Regarding the bloated public sector wage bill, the DA's alternative budget commits to reducing this wage bill by a further 4.3 billion through key interventions such as inflation of salary increases, cutting back on salaries to superfluous departments, and linking salaries to performance. Again, the minister sadly completely missed this opportunity. Today, estimated revenue has declined by 11 billion between October 2014 and February 2015, 5 months. Yet, expenditure has increased by 7 billion, with our budget deficit growing to 162 billion. Our economy and the ANC's economic policy is in a critical condition, and Minister Nene has shown no indication that he has the will to resuscitate it. The DA, Honourable Chairperson, has a better model in our alternative budget. We expressed to the Minister to focus on immediate improvements to manage the people's monies better, and that long-term measures should be set to stimulate and accelerate economic growth. The DA is focused on accelerating small business, addressing youth unemployment, boosting trade and infrastructure development. The ANC are sadly countering it by taking more money away from the poor, in effect. The ANC chairperson, through their budget speech and the determination of our fiscal framework, has shown that their economic policy uncertainty, and they are unable to lead our growth into a prosperous growth path. With a dismal growth of 1.4% in 2014, slashed from a projected rate of 2.7%, the DA is the only party that has shown that it can create jobs so that every South African can live the life they desire. Chairperson, I thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Motlashuping.
Motlatsa modulasetulo wa lekgotla la bosetšhaba la diprovinse, motlatsa tonakgolo, maloko a tlotlegang a ntlo e, baeng ba rona ba tlotlego ba ba leng teng mo galleryng. The ANC remains guided and committed towards the ideals of the Freedom Charter as we work towards building a national democratic society. In this regard, we are enjoined by the Freedom Charter to build a society wherein South Africans belong to all who live in it, black and white. That only a democratic state based on the will of the people can secure to all their birthright without distinction or color, race, sex, or belief. In Mangaung Conference, the ANC resolved that we must work towards the implementation of the recommendations of the 2030 National Development Plan as a long-term vision which should serve as a basis for partnerships across society to attain South Africa of our dreams. as eloquently articulated in the Constitution. Among other key priorities of the NDP is spending on infrastructure as a driver for economic growth and job creation. The NDP further put emphasis on inclusive growth through integrated plans. The 9-key point plan, highlighted by His Excellency, the President of the Republic of South Africa, Comrade Jacob Zuma, in the State of the Nation address further allude to the vital role of the infrastructure to grow the economy. I'm tempted gore ke tlogele selo se ke ne ke se ipakanyeditse ganyana. Ke batla go bolella setšhaba sa Afrika Borwa gore mokgatlo wa African National Congress ikaela yang go tokafatsa ikonomi ya Afrika Borwa. You see, Comrade, Honorable Issa comes to this August House and say that the ANC is putting more suffering on the most vulnerable. He further says, ANC is taking money away from the poor. He said all he had in the budget speech is tax increase. It's very economic with the truth. E re ke mo tlhalosetse gore ANC government e dira eng. Ga ngwana a bonwa mo Afrika Borwa go tloga ka 1994. Mokgatlo wa Afrika wa African National Congress o fa ngwana o di grant, child support grant. Abamba welfare ba fa di grant mahala hala. Ga ngwana yo a fetsa go nna mo dingwageng tse di lekaneng gore a ka ya sekolo, re mo fa dijo, re mo fa di textbook, o tsena sekolo mahala hala. Fa ngwana o a fetsa re mo romela ko high school, o kry-a di textbook, o tsena sekolo, ka ntlheng ya African National Congress taking care of the poor and this budget being pro-poor, mahala hala. Ga re felele foo. Ngwana o ga tsamaya a ya university, go na le NSFAS, go na le di-province tse ke itseng gore mo di-officing tsa di-premier di fana ka di-bazar. I know that in Mamusa, ko Swaziland, bana ba ba yang go ya ko sekolong ba ba tlhokang ba thusiwa ka madi a go register, ba tsena sekolo mahala hala. Ga re felele foo as African National Congress because we are pro-poor. Re ka se balatlhe ka gore ANC ke lefa le modimo a lefileng batlhoki go tswa legodimong. Now, ga ngwana a fetsa foo a le ko university a fetsa go fetsa ga re molatlhe, re tswelela pele ka ngwana yo, ra re o feditse o lekau o itekanetse, ga re molatlhe.
Is that a point of order? Is that a point of order?
Honourable Chair, I would like to know...
No, is that a point of order, Honourable Member? Is that
I'm not prepared to take your question. I'll take it later when I finish with you.
Before you continue, Honourable Members, as you stand up, you are saying I should pay attention to you. And as I pay attention to you, address me, not the member at the podium. Because I asked the member whether if he's standing up on a point of order, rather he addresses the member at the podium, which is totally out of order. May we please refrain from doing that. Honourable Member, may you continue with the debate.
This is a pro-poor budget.
On what point are you rising, Honourable?
Honourable Chair, I need just to say that you asked me if it's a point of order, and I was not addressing the member. I was busy to address you. I was looking straight at
Can
you.
you take your seat?
Honorable Chair, and I was going to say to you, I want to ask a question, but this is why I wanted to ask you if the member would take a question if you had time, Honorable Chair.
No, I asked you 2 times whether if it is a point of order.
But Chair, how do you want
You
me
could
to
have, you
reply?
could have. All you had to do was to say that it is not a point of order. I want to check whether if the member is prepared to take a question.
I will do that exactly the same way next time
Please.
you ask. 100%.
Thank you very much. May you proceed, Honorable Member.
Ke a itumela motlatsamodulasetulo ka gore go sena point of order. Ga ngwana o kana le ka ulele le kgarebele le fetsa ko university ga re molatlhe. Re mo fa di-skills, re mo fa stipend sa go mo baakanyetsa go tla go tsena mo tirong ka di-internship. Is that not a good story to tell? As if ga re latlhe motho ka gore we are pro-poor. Ga ngwana o a feditse kana le kaule le feditse le tsofala, which is the thing which is included in the budget, and you must go and read it, is Honorable Isaac. Ga a tsofala re ba naya pension e lekalekaneng, e seng pension ya basweu le ya bantsho ya semorafi. Batho botlhe mo Afrika Borwa ka ntlheng ya African National Congress ba kry-a pension e lekalekanang. Is that not caring for the poor? It is indeed caring for the poor.
Just hold it, Honorable Member. Is that a point of order, Honorable Khaila?
Yes, no. There's something the honourable member forgot. I just want to remind him. Honourable Karim said that we must
Honourable
laugh
Member.
for 5 minutes.
Honourable
When is he
Member.
going to laugh?
That is not a point of order. Can you proceed, Honorable Member?
Ke ne ke tlhalosa fela gore tekatekanyo e re nang le yone mo pele ga rona budget ya 15-16 is pro-poor, and it is because of the African National Congress. The ANC economic vision rests on the Freedom Charter's call that the people shall share in South Africa's wealth. Through economic transformation, we intend to build an equitable society in which there is decent work for all. That is why the government continues to prioritize infrastructure and job creation amongst its key areas. Government expenditure is projected to be 1.3 trillion in 2015-16, with an estimated average annual MTEF growth rate of 7.9%. Through expenditure, government is directing resources to NDP objectives and the 9-point plan, while also stabilizing the deficit. Over the medium term, government expenditure will, among others, be on education with a budget of 647 billion on basic education, including 36.7 billion on school infrastructure, 364 billion rand on local development and social infrastructure, including 145.5 billion on municipal infrastructure. The budget further provides a budget of 498 billion on social protection, 197 billion on post-school education and training, and 18 billion on providing free meals to over 9 million learners, Honorable Isaac. Let me come to the issue of the energy supply. Public sector infrastructure has been budgeted an amount of 1,813 billion for the current MTEF to stimulate infrastructure development. In 2015 budget, focus on infrastructure spending is to economic infrastructure such as water and sanitation, electricity, roads and transport. Through this core infrastructure spending, government aims to expand power generation to address the energy issue the country is currently faced with. Sustain and improve transport networks for faster and effective trade and improve water and sanitation. Among the 15 pillars of the ANC's 52nd Polokwane Conference resolution was to ensure energy security and promoting clean and renewable sources of energy supply. Expenditure dedicated to energy infrastructure will be 166 billion for the current MTEF period. ESCOM has been allocated 138 billion over the MTEF period to accelerate the completion of power stations and other energy-related projects. Government support to ESCOM is aimed to both financially sustainability and ensure.
Just hold on. There's a difference between to converse loudly and to heckle. And in Parliament, heckling is allowed. But let's not converse to a point where you even distract or obstruct the member at the podium. I know that it is good to have a lively debate and so forth, but let's not disturb the member who is on the podium. Please. Because he ends up laughing now instead of concentrating on his speech.
As mentioned by the President of the Republic of South Africa in the SONA 2015, there are still 3.4 million households in the country without electricity. Against this background, the 2015 budget provides funding through Integrated National Electrification Program grant. With this conditional grant allocation, in conclusion, the NC government has also established the presidential infrastructure.
Honorable member, your time is up.
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mtileni.
Absheni Nkwenu. Chair, the budget is obsessed with foreign direct investment, which has never worked in terms of addressing the fundamental challenges of our economy. The budget does not have the capacity to address the socio-economic challenges South Africans are faced with, like property, inequality, and unemployment. The budget is indeed not responding to the principles of the Freedom Charter adopted 60 years ago, because mineral wealth is still in the hands of white monopoly capital, and our poor masses are still excluded from the mainstream economy. Transfer pricing and profit shifting continues to weaken our economy and deny our people the opportunities to get basic services they so dearly need. Level of unemployment. The current fiscal framework doesn't respond to the challenges of employment, especially for the youth who are qualified in various fields of studies. I may mention qualifications such as engineering, BCom science, and BCom finance, just to mention a few. They are still loitering around the streets without jobs. And I think this is a case in point. All of us will attest to this. This includes the 2.5 million youths who are still without jobs, having qualified from FETs around the country. Yes, I am in the right debate. Of course. Maybe you may be lost. Stats published by Statistics South Africa confirms that youth are still vulnerable to high levels of unemployment. The EFF remains concerned, Chair, at the level of dropouts at tertiary institutions as a result of lack of bursaries and support from the Department of Education, because all they get are loans in the name of NSFAS, not bursaries. As much as we understand socioeconomic challenges and pressures to increase revenue, the EFF is concerned that the proposed tax increases is centered mainly on individuals and not the business sector, The business sector must also contribute sufficient tax to the growth of the economy. It cannot be that individuals in South Africa are forced to bail out the private sector, yet the private sector is the largest sector in South Africa and remains virtually unpoliced. Looking at the debt to the GDP ratio and level of competition and the wasteful expenditure, one critical issue is that government has to do is to root out corruption in both national and provincial departments, as well as municipalities. National Department of Public Works needs to account as well to fellow South Africans as to what informed them to fund Nkandla, even though the president refuses to pay back, because the president does not want to pay back the money, even though the public protector said he should pay back the money. This means to us the president still undermines the public protector as one of the institutions of this country. Human settlements.
Just hold it, honorable member. There's a point. Is it a point of order?
No, it's not a point of order, Chair.
What is it then?
I just want to ask the honorable member through you if he's prepared to take a question.
No, I'm not prepared. Maybe when we're in Acacia Park. Not now.
I'll do the right thing. Honorable member, are you prepared to take
I am
a
not,
question?
Chair.
He is not.
It's just wasting my time. The country is experiencing...
There's a point of order. Can you take your seat?
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Chairperson. The member is misleading the public when he utters a statement that the president is refusing to pay back the money. There is no court that has decided on the president to pay back the money. So please withdraw the statement and don't deceive the public.
Oh, no. No. I didn't hear the part of refusing to pay the money. Said it so. Okay then. Allow me an opportunity to check with Hansard and then make a ruling in the next sitting. Because it is important to make a correct ruling. I thought that he was referring to, no, I don't know what's the excitement. Because the issue that I thought the issue that I heard was that there is a recommendation by the public protector for the president to pay. So allow me that opportunity to then look at Hansard. May you proceed, Honorable.
Yeah, maybe you can allow me to also clear the member there, because there's a recommendation.
It's your task.
There's a recommendation which says the president should pay the Nkandla money because he unduly benefited. So if you are not sure of your statement, then you better put your hand.
Let me not allow dialogue. Allow me to...
Yes, please.
Continue speaking.
Please, thank you. We'll talk outside, Honorable, don't worry. Under human settlement, the country has experienced a huge backlog in providing houses.
Is that a point of order?
Yes.
I would like to know if the member is prepared to take a question.
Honorable member, are you prepared to take a question?
I think they're just wasting my time.
Are you prepared to take a question?
Like I'm saying, they're wasting my time. I'm not prepared.
Honorable member, I'm asking you.
I am not prepared.
All right. The member is not prepared.
They're just wasting my time. Why do you waste my precious time? I was still saying the country has experienced a huge backlog in providing houses for the poor. This is why we still have millions of people living in squatter camps and shacks without water, sanitation, and other essential services. How can we call South Africa a free country when 21 years down the line, our so-called freedom is only benefiting a few people instead of benefiting the majority of South Africans? It also came out in public hearing on fiscal framework that both ministers and deputy ministers are not sure about their mandates because this has just reduced them to mere check collectors. Professor Fanny Rousseau, from the head of School of Economics and Science in Wits University, said South Africa suffers investment hesitation owing to power supply and policy uncertainty that is impacting negatively on the economic growth. A lower growth rate that will change these assumptions considerably as it erodes growth in the base with fiscal cliff moving closer. Before dealing with lack of investment from the private sector, we must first acknowledge that the economy is not owned by the majority of South Africans, as it is base level and in an unequal economic structure. Having our economy open to more private investment will not change this basic reality. Transfer pricing. EFF calls for a review on transfer pricing, on how much has the economy suffered on it. NUMSA quoted Deputy Minister Jeremy Cronin, who said, lots of dividends has been paid to the UK. A much larger fraction is the huge export of capital. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Gaila.
Honorable Chairperson, Deputy Minister Upili. The UDM supports the report on the Select Committee. We further welcome the focus on the oceans economy and hope that the relevant department will move with great speed in resolving issues related to licensing and other administrative processes and procedures. Indeed, the prioritization of mining sector and further place it as part of the Pakisa program is also welcome. We do emphasize, though, the need to ensure that the Pakisa program is cleaned off any potential and alleged corruption activities. The centralization of the procurement must be done with speed, taking into consideration all the weaknesses of the system registered before. We hope that indeed it will deliver the intended objective instead of the past centralization to a few. A detail of how this is going to be done is needed with urgency. The state-owned enterprises must be made accountable about their finances as any other public institution. The tendency to treat them as outside public service is not helping the House to hold them accountable to the executive. Allocation of a formula of budget to provinces and local government is informed by product of a process that is not perfect, the census. It does not consider historic imbalances, in particular in respect of former TBV states and rural communities. The increase of the personal income tax is hitting hard on the middle class and requires to be understood within the context that will have future problems for the growth of the economy. One would suggest that this system does not directly deal with the structural imbalances of our economy. Does it Deputy Minister? Ubana umtsa phakathi kwabatyebileyo nabahluphekayo uyenda. And le nto lena iyafuna uadresa. For instance, uphuma kulo mhlaba uyazi kakuhle lakho uphuma kwela cala lethu. If you remember pre-1994, ititshara yomlungu ibikwazi uthenga indlu edorophini, but now ayikwazi kwenzeka loo nto leyo. Let us be factual. Ubani uhamba apha emalwandle, izindlu ezininji neendawo ezininji, abantu bethu bakwazi uzifumana. So we need to address these issues here because zizosibetha ekugqibeleni. Okugqibela, nasithetha ngala maphandle which you inherited. Ubana uyangapha kolisikisiki and Ports and Johns, which is a tourism Nansinga area. Yofumanisa ubana indlela ziphelile. Yes, you've inherited these problems, but we need to address them. ufika kukho amatyotyombe phakathi edorophini. Those things can only be addressed through budget. So we need to address these things here. Okokugqibela, Chairperson, your report is not full, and Honorable De Beer, really, I'm really not happy. Honorable Karim, your joint chairperson, I've been phoned by people, said that you must also report that we must laugh for 5 minutes. I haven't seen you laughing. And worst of all, even the people on the TV, they complain that they haven't seen you laughing. So can you just laugh for 5 minutes, please? Thank you.
Okay. Well, that's another committee matter.
It's a committee.
Yeah, no. Honorable Mutara.
Honorable Deputy Chairperson of the Council, Minister of Finance in absentia, Honorable Nkankla Nene, Deputy Minister of Finance, Honorable Jonas, Chief Whip of Council, Honorable members of the NCOP, guests, ladies and gentlemen. On the 25th of February this year, Minister Nene tabled his first budget. This done at a time when the global economic recovery remains subdued as many high-income countries continue to struggle with the legacies of the global financial crisis, and the emerging market economies are less dynamic than in the past. Noting that we are not an island, and thus with the dawn of democracy and post-apartheid, we consciously entered the global economic arena. We are now, more than ever before, affected by external as well as internal factors. Allow me, Honorable Deputy Chairperson, to congratulate the Minister for a job well done, a commendable effort, one that I personally do not envy one bit. Getting the balance right is not only difficult, given current internal and external conditions, but to a certain extent it becomes near impossible. Regardless, well done, Minister, keep it up. The ANC manifesto priorities in 2014, which resulted in a 62% electoral support, the ANC prioritized 5 key areas, as we had done in 2009. Those being the first, decent work, sustainable livelihoods, and to create more jobs. The second, rural development, land reform, and food security. The third, education. The fourth, health. And the fifth, to fight crime and corruption. We went further to include a 6th priority, which is to prioritize and promote social cohesion and nation building, and thus contribute to creating a better Africa and a just world. We have adopted the National Development Plan as the foundation for long-term planning towards implementing a radical socio-economic agenda over the next 20 years. Within the NDP vision, critical policy instruments will continue to drive government's policy agenda. These include the new growth path, which shifts the trajectory of economic development, the National Infrastructure Plan, which guides the rollout of infrastructure to improve people's lives, the Industrial Policy Action Plan, which supports the reindustrialization of the economy. As the NCOP, we want to congratulate the Minister and his team for using recommendations made by the NCOP Select Committee in relation to the Matlosana local municipality disaster allocations, funding for the Moloto Road in Mpumalanga, and conditional grant for municipalities affected by redemarcation. There are other areas that have been raised by the Select Committee, and we look forward to them finding expression in future revenue and fiscal proposals. One of the most important aspects of the NDP is that of education. But in this important aspect of education, we need to ensure that all South Africans have access to quality education, qualified teachers, as well as which will include being accessible to all. Scholar transport will be provided to many parts of South Africa, which is currently funded by the Department of Education. The provision of transport has remained one of the key challenges confronting government in the post-apartheid era. This is largely as a result of the apartheid practices that ensured that the majority of the society was placed in areas which were largely inaccessible, but also because of the complexity of the current transport needs resulting from increased economic activity. The NDP's plan and government's 2014 to 2019 medium-term strategic framework envisages that by 2030, South Africans should have access to education and training of the highest quality. leading to significantly improved learning outcomes. On that note, transfers to universities will increase by 6.3% over the medium term to reach a projected budget of 29 billion rand by 2017-18. These transfers include spending on infrastructure in newly established universities of Mpumalanga and Saltpike University in the Northern Cape. In addition to access to universities, the NDP also recognizes the need to expand access to occupationally directed programs to increase the availability of intermediate level skills in the economy, in particular artisan skills. The 2015 budget provides a projected expenditure for the Sector Education and Training Authorities, National Skills Fund, an amount of 17.4 billion rand by 2017-18, which shows an increase of 13.2 billion rand from 2014 to 15. We note that a post-matric education is necessary for any individual to acquire the skills and capabilities to participate in the economy and contribute meaningfully as a citizen. Over the past years, historically disadvantaged South Africans have been denied access to tertiary institutions, resulting as a result of funding requirements. Through the increasing of students that enroll to university and colleges, it necessitates funding requirement for the historically disadvantaged South African. It must mean that we are doing something correct if there is an increased student enrollment to the tertiary institutions. On that note, the projected increase in enrollments at universities and technical and vocational education and training colleges, the National Student Financial Aid Scheme is expected to receive 19.9 billion rand over the medium term in transfers from the Department of Higher Education for university loans and bursaries and college bursaries. NSFAS is projected to support 711,355 students in higher education institutions over the medium term. Expanded access to higher education for the poor and disadvantaged remains a key priority for the ANC-led government. According to the research conducted by the HSRC, it shows that NSFAS has been successful in terms of student graduation. And in comparison to non-NSFAS students, NSFAS students increasingly obtain degrees rather than diplomas or certificates. The ANC therefore remains committed to transform South Africa for the better. Deputy Minister, in my humble opinion, no matter what tax increases you proposed, these proposals would have been shot down by the opposition. In true opposition character and style, had you increased VAT by any amount, this would have been the worst decision you could possibly have made. Now that you haven't increased the VAT rate, which by the way would have affected all South Africans, whether you earn 190,000 rand per annum or less or more, this is what we are told should have been done, the proposals made instead. A budget, therefore, is not just a collection of numbers, but an expression of our values and aspirations. And for those that do not share our values and aspirations as the ANC, they will not support these budget proposals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Van Lingen.
Honorable Chairperson.
Is that a point of order, Honorable? Can you take your seat, Honorable? Take your seat.
The point of order, Chair. I'm checking whether it's parliamentary to oppose a debate and then come back and participate in that debate that we are opposing.
No, there's nothing unparliamentary about that. May you continue the debate, Honorable.
Honorable Chairperson, when Minister Nene had the opportunity to bring austerity to the South African government spending, he willfully allowed the ANC to put the burden on all South Africans by increasing taxes as part of our current fiscal framework. The telltale, you won't know anything about finances, madam, because the way you ran your municipality into the ground is a disgrace. The telltale of this does not end here, but manifested through other announcements Minister Nene made. The National Revenue and Expenditure projected GDP has been revised from 2.5% down to 2%, and the debt ratio to GDP over the medium term is something to be alarmed about. It is now at 41%, growing to 44% in the next financial year. If the contingent liabilities are included, it increases to 57.3% at 2.8 trillion rand, and soon it will be at 61%, which is not a comfortable place for South Africa to be in. Minister Nene had the opportunity to speak about corruption and cutting government expenses, but he let it pass. The message is clear. In an ANC state, you will always be looked after, even at the expense of the taxpayers in South Africa. But the minister should have listened to the DA's alternate budget, which widely recognizes that the only long-term solution to South Africa's economic woes is real economic growth. What the DA can deliver on is that we can stimulate the economy and create job opportunities this country so desperately needs. Honorable Beard talks about 3.6 million people that have been lifted out of poverty, but with an increasing expanded unemployment rate of 36%, the country is in a downward spiral. The state is not there to be the major employer in South Africa, but to create.
Can you take your seat on?
Chair, will the honourable member take a question?
Honourable member, are you prepared to take a question?
No, thank you. Not now. I will do it later.
No, she's not prepared to take a question.
She's misleading the House.
Honourable members, please, if you want to seek my attention, please stand up. Because if you raise your hand, I don't know whether you're weighing up or, so just stand up and so that I recognize you. Honourable member, you may proceed.
Chairperson, the state must not be the major employer, but it must create the environment for business and investment to thrive. This said, my colleague pointed out how increasing taxes is not only bad for business, but bad for society and bad for our country. One of the biggest strains on the public purse in terms of expenditure is the litany of state-owned enterprises and their financial ruins. The minister was silent on his commitment in his medium-term budget policy statement to sell off 20 billion rands worth of non-strategic assets to fund certain SOEs. When will the bailout stop? The minister's message is clear. The state will continue to fund dysfunctional SOEs and the public will have to pay. Eskom guarantees are at 3.5 billion, but has only borrowed 224.9 billion. Over 6 years, South Africans had to face above inflation electricity increases, and now at present we are facing another application to NERSA to increase electricity tariffs, which will further fund the inefficiencies of Eskom and with a reduced electricity supply. To add fuel to the fire, and unfortunately the fire doesn't make electricity, it makes disgrace and poverty, the temporary increase in the electricity levy was announced to assist demand management. Eskom plays a key role in our economy. Electricity shortages threaten economic survival. The DA government will break up the Eskom monopoly by dividing it into separate generation and transmission units. The national grid must be accessible to independent power producers who should compete alongside Eskom. This will open up our economy. Whilst the ANC government fails to lead the economy, South Africans pay the greatest price. South Africans want to have the right to have a dignified life and decent jobs. They do not want to be dependent on the state. They want to be part of the South African economy. This budget is not doing anything for the poor. There is no value for the money, and there is no bang for the bucks of the taxpayers, because it is a failing budget that is failing the country. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable Kaula.
Honorable Chairperson, the 2015 budget provided little hope that South Africa was on track towards alleviating the plight of the poor and instead pushed an underpaid and overtaxed taxpayer into a corner, leaving citizens with more questions than answers. The increase of the petrol tax and the increase in road accident fund levy sees petrol go up by 80.5 cents, with routine petrol month increases in the offing and over the foreseeable future. An increase in petrol will no doubt give impetus to an increase in food prices and transport costs, placing an added burden on the poor, underpaid and overtaxed taxpayer, on needy students commuting to schools and university, with the economy set to grow at less than 2%. The IFP welcomes the increases in social grants as they seek to ease the socio-economic conditions of the poor who are struggling daily to make ends meet and bear the brutal brunt of poverty and suffering. However, greater emphasis must be focused on the creation of jobs, and we must pioneer the ideals of self-help and self-reliance. We must admit that in light of studied economic growth and snail-paced economic development, South Africa has fast become a dependency state. The IFP remains concerned that the government continues to throw financial solutions to non-financial problems. It is grossly unfair for the taxpayer to be expected to fund incompetence and corruption. Education receives the greatest share of the budget, but we have very little to show for this heavy investment. The allocation to education borders on wasteful expenditure. How do we reconcile the fact that the NSFAS is allocated 6.49 billion with the reality that thousands of deserving and needy students are left in the cold because of lack of funding? The money is there, but NSFAS is characterized by corruption and poor planning. SAA and ESCOM are all visually on the knees, not because they need money, but because they lack leadership and the requisite will to plan properly. These state-owned entities are a burden on the taxpayer with endless bailouts and guarantees. Where will the money come from to stabilize the parastatals? The minister said the allocation of 23 billion made in October for ESCOM will be paid in 3 installments, but did not make it clear where that money is to be found. Similarly, he was quiet on the 14.4 billion guarantees for SAA. The energy crisis, more a crisis than a challenge, Honorable Deputy Minister, has in many respects arisen because government has been poor with its planning and relaxed about punishing failure. The failure to maintain infrastructure and the dismal failure to complete Medupi and Kusile power stations on time must not go unpunished because it has overshot its budget and paralyzed the economy. The 2-cent temporary increase in the electricity levy to 5.5 cents per kilowatt will work out to be a big number, and every consumer who pays for electricity will pay that, although this may well work out to be a further subsidy for industrial users paid by residential users. And the minister did not indicate whether this levy will be across the board. The lack of compliance across the government spectrum with the PFMA and NFMA treasury regulations and SCM regulations must be dealt with harshly because it is in this realm that corruption is bred at the expense of an underpaid and overstretched taxpayer and to the detriment of service delivery. In conclusion, the budget speech was punctuated by fancy niceties about fighting corruption, and the IFP will support the initiatives of the minister in this regard. The ball is now in his court and he must start walking the talk. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mohai. He's actually benefiting. He actually benefits
Thanks very
out
much,
of the 15 minutes
Honorable
left by you.
Chairperson, Deputy Minister of Finance, Honorable Jonas, honorable members. The market fundamentalism of the DA should be defeated. In ideological struggle, the state can't be passive. It has to be active through fiscal policy, monetary policy, regulation, industrial policy, and social policy. We cannot privatize ESCOM
and live the fate of millions of South African people that is still without electricity, to the vulgarities of the profit-driven market forces. We shall, as a response to the challenges reflected by the Minister of Finance, as ANC, choose to engage in rational debates in discussing the fiscal framework of our country. First of all, Chairperson, the ANC welcomes the budget table by Minister of Finance. The budget table does confirm that indeed these are difficult times, laden with difficult choices and trade-offs. Some of these choices are not desirable, but they are unfortunately unavoidable. The macroeconomic conditions, including the business cycle, have remained largely anti-growth. South Africa is not alone in this predicament, as the economic outlook in all regions of the globe remained in the pre-session period. Honorable members who serve in this Committee of Finance have missed a golden opportunity during the lock-up session, where all documents were presented and all of us were required one thing, but to read and appreciate factual information presented before us. However, some chose to ignore the facts and engage in the side shows in debating this fiscal framework. The structural problems ranging from stagnation, deflation, and stagflation to weak aggregate demand, falling rates of profit, and chronic sovereign debt have remained prevalent within the world economies, resulting in continued slow growth rates and unfavorable macroeconomic conditions that tend to resemble what most economists call a secular stagnation. Chairperson, these are the economic contexts in the world today within which we're deliberating on this 2015 national budget. Our domestic economy is also not immune to these challenges, including both cyclical and structural challenges, which of course continue to make our option difficult in this national budget. The significant rise in the level of the national debt has now thrown up challenges for rebalancing the budget in order to manage the debt by reducing the budget deficit and a reduction in the main budget expenditure ceiling. This resulted from budget deficits that were employed as part of counter-cyclical measures at the onset of the Great Recession in 2009. These cyclical challenges only add to the persistent structural problems of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. This was not discovered yesterday by a newly formation which doesn't understand its role. These problems result from the skewed economic structures in the production system, value chain, and trade that express in terms of lack of diversity, competition, and local investment. Chairperson, we also welcome the tax proposals in the 2015 budget that will result in raising income tax by 1% percentage point, continue on the redistributive trajectory of taxing more the high-income earners whilst protecting and benefiting the poor through government spending on social grants, electricity, education, health, housing, and other basic needs. Opposition parties chose not to raise this fact. Honorable members, the progressive character of our tax system comes alive in the minister's budget 2 weeks ago. Those who earn more will pay more, while those who earn less pay less. Personal income tax constitutes 34% of the all tax revenue collected by SARS. A joint report by SARS and National Treasury suggests that where 15.4 million registered taxpayers in 2012, and that 5.9 million people were active and liable for tax. And out of that, only 5.1 million was actually assessed for tax. The report indicates more than 50% of the taxpayers earn between 120,000 to 500,000 were responsible for more 47% of income tax revenue. While 6.6% of taxpayers earn more than 500,000 and were responsible for 49% of the income tax revenue. This means more about 57% of taxpayers are responsible for 97% of all income tax revenue collected. A sizable portion of these will still be exempted from the new tax increase, considering that it will only affect those earning more than 181,900,000. Chairperson, while the redistribution of tax liability across taxable income and income groups paints a picture of acute inequalities of our society, the progressive character of our tax system is still consistently laid bare. So the more than 43% of poor will be exempted and protected from the 1% percentage point. And I must say, Chair, a point earlier made by my colleague, Honorable Mutara, that VAT has not been increased because as a flat rate tax, it means the poor would mostly severely be affected. In other words, VAT is rather regressive than progressive. Yes, Honorable Chair, the consumer spending, which is needed for stimulating the aggregate demand in economy, is likely to be affected by the increase in taxes amounting to 17 billion. But that will be countered by the government infrastructure spending and other relief measures such as that has been made for middle income earners with regard to duty fee transfers at the sale of property that has been increased to start at 750,000. Chairperson, I must say, the tax relief and incentive to small businesses that are going to be implemented out of the Davis Commission are indeed commendable. This recommendation limit compliance burden and paperwork for macro businesses with an annual turnover of 1 million. The expansion of SMME sector through active state policy instrument will help break the monopoly structures in the economy and help build efficiencies in the equity, in that more people will have gainful economic participation, not fronting that some of those who lead it behind corners, using their skills to undermine ongoing transformation agenda in our country are using. We must also commend government for providing significant tax relief and incentive to businesses, including depreciation allowance that seeks to support investment so as to expand production, tax expenditures or revenue to support social or industrial policy objectives is estimated at 120 billion, or 15% of the gross tax revenue. The expansion of production through industrialization on a large scale is the most essential program for creating sustainable, decent jobs on a large scale. ANC does have a plan. We put forward a program of industrialization that nothing will change automatically out of the current state of economy, other than employing state policy instruments. Increasing the rate of capital investment by local players, both in the public and private sectors, is going to be key in reducing the current account deficit. The historical structural problem with our balance of payments is that the bulk of goods we import are capital goods. More than just responding to cyclical problems of declining revenue exports, we have to address the structural problems in our current account, increasing local investment in capital goods for expanding production should be our starting point. We must also strive to increase our exports in ways that undermine all trade structures by increasing the value of our production. We speak about beneficiation, agro-processing, and in other manufacturing sectors for our exports. The value adding to our products must be accompanied by innovation through technologies and a concerted effort to skills development for our workers and increase productivity so as to compete in global markets. Honorable members, we cannot overemphasize the strategic necessity of overarching industrial policy with an active state support to radically transform our productive system away from historical structures of monopoly, away from extractive production, and away from a dependent integration into global economy. With no autonomy to negotiate our sovereign growth path, our industrial policy action should therefore build a productive system with sustained high growth levels in industrial production and strengthening capacity for our manufacturing industries to be competitive on a global stage. Chairperson, Minister Rob Davis said it very nicely when launching EPAP 2 in 2010. He said, and I quote, as a country, South Africa has no alternative to the course of action we propose. Manufacturing and other productive sectors of economy are the engines of long-term growth and sustainability. Just to conclude, Honorable Chair, Despite chorus of noises from opposition benches, ANC-led policy interventions have proven resilient and even more than even other countries in the world. DA propositions are not sustainable. Social security in South Africa is sustainable within the limits of possibilities, not own imagination. This is based on empirical evidence. DA is silent on capital flight because of the class they represent and that they are unable to raise these issues. ANC has spoken on corruption. ANC established agencies to uncover corruption. You must celebrate culture. You must celebrate the culture that we have created as the ANC. We are a constitutional state. ANC advocate for independence and autonomy of corruption in fighting institutions. Issues of process and outcomes should not be speculative. You must understand, honorable members from DA, do not raise speculation, distinguish between process and the outcomes of such processes. The final arbiter is the courts in South Africa. We are a democratic state, so we'll protect our people and forge ahead in transforming our country for the better.
Thank you very much. May I then officially welcome the Deputy Minister to this Aka's house and on the basis of that, invite you to the podium.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chair of the NCOP, Chief Whip of the ruling party, the Chair of the Select Committee on Appropriation and Finance, and honorable members broadly. Can I start off by making a general comment to say that I think it has been very useful, the process towards the budget on the 25th, in two critical ways. The first is that after we tabled the midterm budget framework, we've had serious engagement with committees, relevant committees, but we've also had serious engagement and very sober contribution and critique from a whole range of stakeholders, from academics, economics, scientists in different fields, to comment on what we were proposing last year in October. And I must also add that after tabling the budget, we also enjoyed equally the same level of engagement and the same quality of engagement. I'm saying this thing, honorable members, because I think the country as a whole is at a crossroads. And part of what is going to take us beyond this point is going to be serious, qualitative engagement between all stakeholders in society, not point scoring. And as I was listening to members here, I would actually be pardoned to be confused to think that there are elections tomorrow. The things that they were saying. The second point, of course, is that in order to engage with the ANC and government quite substantively and coherently, I would also suggest to members that we must read the baseline documents. The budget speech is just a small summary. There is a budget review document which details some of the issues that members raised here. Some of the points that members raised here, I must say, were valuable and useful, but I must also equally say that some of them were just trivial. Some of the points raised. I'll come to these points as I go through my presentation. Can I just summarize, because I think it's also important to say, what is the overarching objective of this current budget that we're debating in the fiscal framework? It is based on 4 core overarching assumptions and objectives and priorities. And I'll summarize them because I think probably because our debate must be moved from that point at a strategic level. The first, I think, overarching priority is narrowing the budget deficit and stabilizing debt through stricter management of fiscus and tighter expenditure ceilings, as well as increasing revenue through tax. Now, it's only somebody who, if somebody says there is a country that doesn't tax, I still want somebody must raise and say, this is this country, this is how successful it is. Revenue in all countries, modern countries and modern economy, public revenue is generated through tax. It's basic. And that's basic economics. The second, I think, overarching objective is sustaining the social gains of democracy and making sure that the tough economic times do not force us into a situation where we erode social protection of the poor and most vulnerable. So second, that's a very critical thing when you look at this budget. To what extent do we do that? The third, I think, objective that I would suggest that we focus on is growing and transforming the economy and addressing what Honorable Gayla raised, tackling inequality. Because inequality is a fundamental. We've made so much progress in South Africa around poverty alleviation, and I'll demonstrate that very soon. We probably have made very little progress when it comes to inequality. It remains core of government's agenda. The fourth, I think, overarching objective is reinforcing our efforts that we've always been driving around transforming the public sector towards a more capable developmental state. Honorable Chair, can you allow me to just talk on each of these points very briefly, because I think in response to some of the debates that have been here, that have gone on here. In line with lower than expected GDP growth and tax revenue, the minister's focus constrained fiscal outlook over the medium term. In spite of raising additional 16.8 billion in 2015-2016 through increased personal income tax rates and general fuel levies and all the measures that we outlined, we believe that we still face serious challenges moving forward. I must emphasize, though, as I will talk about tax again, the debate about tax policy in South Africa is a continuous debate. If, again, you members could take time to read the budget review, you would actually realize that we are saying the Davis Tax Commissions continues. And part of the task of the Davis Tax Commission is to avoid sweeping statements that have no basis. It is to ensure that when we talk about tax, we evaluate the economic basis of taxation, to evaluate the impact of taxation on economic growth, on employment creation, and a whole range of things, and income distribution. And that's what the Davis Tax Commission is seized with. And I will encourage honorable members who think that we have lost it when it comes to taxation to actually engage that committee more constructively on those substantive issues. You would actually note that there are different views on taxations in any country. Those who represent the rich would have different views to those who represent the poor and the marginalized. But the ANC government has to reflect the fundamental interest of the country. That is why I think in the debate that we had on taxation, we had a long debate on VAT, we had a long debate on company tax, company income tax, we had a lot of debate on personal income tax. It was not a decision to raise income tax marginally. It's 1% marginal in rate of increase. It was not an easy decision that we take. We had a long debate and inputs from professionals and experts on the matter. It was not something that we slept and woke up and suggested. The other aspect of consolidation, fiscal consolidation, are addressing the budget deficit and improving the debt to ratio, the debt to GDP ratio in the country. We have been upfront. Again, if you read these documents, you stand here and criticize us about debt and all these things. Go and read the document. We ourselves are telling you that that's the reality that we have to deal with. Maintain expenditure ceilings, improve the quality of expenditure, and ensuring sustainable wage bill. I wanted to underline this thing about improving the quality of expenditure. We believe, and we've raised this thing, that we must gradually look at the composition of our budget and begin to shift it more towards economic development. The second area is sustaining the social gains of democracy. Over the past 10 years, spending per citizen grew by 80%, and this is factual. we're not cooking these numbers. And expenditure on social services has doubled. Social assistance is provided to more than 16 million beneficiaries in the country. In fact, if you read some of the international reports, the argument globally, whilst you are being criticized internally, the argument globally is that South Africa has been able, over the last 20 years, to build what is probably the most successful social package in the world. And our poorer citizens now have access to healthcare, education, state-subsidized housing, subsidized transport, and free basic services. These are real social gains. We're not cooking them. Extreme poverty has declined dramatically. Comrades who stood here made reference to the World Bank report, and I will encourage people again to read the report. Because whilst we are talking about South Africa struggling to deal with poverty, we probably are amongst the few countries that have been able to use Fiscal to dent poverty, extreme poverty in real terms. And that's what all international agencies are acknowledging. I add, though, that we have not done the same with inequality. And that is where I think our focus should be in the next couple of years. This budget, therefore, in essence, is an attempt to ensure that we do not erode our social protection package for the poor. And if you read the budget, it shows very clearly that that social package remains intact. Now, there's a problem, though, because many members tend to look at social package from grants only. Social package is broader than grants. Social package is about housing, it is about healthcare, it is about education. All of those things represent what you call social package. It is not just grants. Grants are probably one aspect of social package, and it's important that you understand that part. The third issue is growing the productive economy. Again, we make this point very clear, that the fiscal constraints we currently face are as a direct result of growth, of slow growth of the national economy. Now, I do not want to get into the debate. I think Honorable Mohaya got into the debate to try to explain why we are where we are. And in the budget review, we actually go into detail to demonstrate that we are where we are because of these following reasons. And I'm not going to get into that debate because I know, people do know, by the way. But when it's convenient, we always look on the other side and ignore those basic facts. But we have adopted a position that says there is, and the President actually in his State of the Nation address was very strong on the point of effecting so radical economic transformation, both as a means to accelerate growth as well as achieving transformational outcomes, such as more inclusive and more de-racialized economy. Our economy is still highly racialized, and that's something that we have to confront. And I know some other parties would refuse to deal with those issues. And at the moment, we've also accepted another point, that electricity and energy supply remains a major constraint to growth. We have made that point, but we've also gone beyond that point to actually indicate what government is doing. And I want to summarize the program. In the first instance, our intervention is about stabilizing ESCOM. Now, to stabilize ESCOM is to achieve a couple of things. And it's a very important point to make, that our generating capacity in the country is probably around 48,000, if you look for the 8,000 megawatts, if you look at ESCOM. The demand in the country is about 36. So if you use simple arithmetics, we should be able to meet the demand. In addition, we've actually created new additional capacity of more than 5,000. So that would say we must meet the demand. But the problem is that existing capacity in ESCOM over the years, there's been underinvestment in maintenance, and maintenance has been badly managed. And this is what government at the moment is seized with, to drive ESCOM leadership and management to come up with a very dynamic, more effective, more focused maintenance program. The second element of that is dealing across the economy, the challenge of energy inefficiency. you would actually not believe that South Africa is almost close to the UK in terms of levels of energy inefficiency. Those two economies are not of the same size. Clearly, we need to do something to make our country more energy efficient. And those are things that we are currently doing. The third element is actually introducing some level of capital support or capitalization of ESCOM, and that's the 23 billion that we're talking about. Again, I will urge honorable members, in the budget review, we demonstrate how that 23 billion will be actualized. And I would ask people to go and read it. But in general, we also make the point, which I'll raise later, that funding SOEs moving forward, they will only be funded in a manner that does not increase deficit, which means their balance sheet will be the basis for their funding, not fiscus. And that's something that we are already impacting. We can give you, again, I would not respond to the guarantees given to the entities because that is amply explained, again, in the budget review document. With regards to driving the economic growth, again, we are actually talking about pursuing reindustrialization programs and economic diversification programs. Again, we go at length to show the incentive programs in DTI, the interventions in agriculture, and our work in broadband infrastructure. I want to end this part by actually emphasizing that those who cared to look at the budget statement by the minister would also realize that capital spending continues to grow. And if you're saying we're eroding and we're not responding to growth, I do not understand how do you understand capital expenditure? Our capital expenditure is growing. If you add to capital expenditure the pipeline projects by state-owned enterprises, you would actually realize that South Africa maintains our growth trajectory of the spending in this area. We've expanded investment in economic assets, in electricity, ports, rail, and pipelines as part of ensuring that we grow the economy. We've also, in addressing spatial inequality, we've also said that the cities must be the engines for growth moving forward. That is why we're adopting a new package, fiscal package for cities, to ensure that we change the funding for cities over time so that we make the grants to cities more flexible, we increase their borrowing capacity so that they could actually have catalytic projects that drive growth in the cities. The last point is around transforming the public sector. There are two issues there that are critical in this regard. The first is achieving efficiencies. And again, people were saying here, we are not taking care about the cost of running government. You must look at the measures that we're introducing in that regard. But the second part is ensuring that we build the capability of the state to drive economic transformation, which is a second aspect of. So there's one aspect of it is about efficiency, ensuring that we lower the cost of running government. The second part is obviously the issue of efficiency. And I would want to just run through some of the packages. We have said we are putting a freeze on personnel headcounts. And you could go into details in our budget review about what we're doing around that. We're trying to drive towards conclusion of multi-year wage agreements. We're continuing to reform supply chain, and the minister was very detailed in dealing with those issues. We are focusing on improving efficiencies and cost savings of provinces, etc., etc. And all of those are aimed at ensuring that we improve the capability of the state, but also we lower the cost of running government, because we think that those two go together. I want to end, Honorable Chair, by saying that we do need a genuine debate about economic development. We do need, as a country, a serious debate about economic development. We're putting forward the proposals in the NDP and the proposals in our MTEF, the proposal in the budgets. Those are genuine, sober proposals. We would require that people engage with them in a very sober way if they are to contribute towards strengthening the development trajectory in the country. I know that there is a very strong doomsday contingent led by some parties who think that because the country is governed by the ANC, who, by the way, is probably the only party in this parliament that fought for freedom in this country. There are those who think that we wrote the, just to show the point, we wrote the Constitution. The ANC drove the process of drafting the Constitution because we believed in what is contained in the Constitution. But there are people who go around trying to show that there is a pending constitutional crisis. South Africa is one of the few countries in the world where government accepts the reality that when we take cases to court, we can lose them. In other countries, judges would actually fear to rule against government. In this country, judges rule against the ANC, and we accept that. And yet people will say that we are in where there's a constitutional crisis. By the way, we are one of the few countries in Africa where past presidents are still operating and freely and have social and political programs without interference. In many countries, you do not have the luxury of having past presidents. Some of them are in prison, some of them are dead, some of them are in exile. They're here living with us to demonstrate how vibrant our democracy is. I'm raising these issues solely to say that until such time that all of us, black and white, irrespective of political party, we realize that the task must be solely to contribute and to criticize when we have to criticize, but constructively. Can I shut up and sit down? Thanks.
No, thank you very much. Deputy Minister. Honorable members, that concludes the debate. I shall now put the question, and the question is that the report be agreed to. In accordance with Rule 71, I shall first allow provinces an opportunity to make their declaration of vote if they so wish. Is there any province that wishes to make a declaration of vote? In the absence of any province, is there any province that wishes to make a declaration of vote?
Yes, yes, Chair.
Okay. You may proceed.
Honourable Chairperson, considering Minister Nene's budget speech last week, the DA would like to record the following declaration.
Is it the DA or the Western Cape, or what province is this that is making a declaration?
Chair, I apologise. The ruling party in the Western Cape.
No, no.
The Western Cape.
No.
The Western Cape, Chair.
Honourable member. The question that I put was that is there any province that wishes to make a declaration of vote?
Yes.
And you said yes. Now can we just get clarity on which province is this?
The Western Cape.
All right. May you proceed with the declaration of vote.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Chair. Considering Minister Nene's budget speech last week, I would like to make the following declaration. The Minister had an opportunity to speak about the rise of unemployment, cutting wasteful expenditure and corruption, but what we heard was that the Minister will be increasing taxes. If there are high tax increases, people will spend less money, lowering demand for goods and services and ultimately costing South Africans their jobs. To qualify this, the Minister announced an increase of 1% to every taxpayer earning more than 181,900 a year. This will affect approximately 3.5 million South Africans. What the Minister should have done was to implement a short-term solution to avoid tax increases by cutting the public sector wage bill, which will now stand at 479.5 billion. The DA's alternative budget commits to reducing this wage bill by 4.3 billion through key interventions such as inflation of salary increases, cutting back on salaries to superfluous departments, and linking salaries to performance. It must be emphasized that some of the most wasteful expenditure in the public sector relates to cabinet. South Africa is one of the largest cabinets in the world, comprised by the President, Deputy President, 35 ministries, 37 deputy ministries. As an example, Cabinet's billion rand price tag includes an inexplicable 247 million for official vehicles alone. The tax increases will come at an expense to every South African who will have to pay for our government's failures of being unable to steer our economy to a growth path that will one day take South Africans out of poverty and the ability to provide for the families.
Is that the honourable member is not clear to me. He talks about our government, he talks about the DA, when he is supposed to be talking on behalf of a province. I think it will be recorded wrongly in Hansa, Chair, those errors that have been made. Thank you, Chair.
I will sustain that order. Honourable member, stick to the provincial declaration. In terms of Rule 71, it's not a party declaration. It's not a 75 bill that we're dealing with here. I made it very clear from the beginning. Hence, I want to sustain that order as raised by the member. Are you done, honourable member? Is there any other province that wishes to make a declaration of vote? In the absence of any other province, we shall now proceed to the voting. And before I do that, may I ascertain as to whether all delegation heads are in the House. If that be so, then shall we proceed with the voting? Eastern Cape?
Eastern Cape is in favor.
Free State?
Free State in favor.
Gauteng?
Gauteng supports.
KwaZulu-Natal?
KwaZulu-Natal yamukela sihlalo.
Limpopo?
Uyadumela uLestu.
Mpumalanga?
Impumalanga iyavumelana sihlalo.
Northern Cape?
The Northern Cape supports, Chair.
Northwest?
Northwest agrees, Chair.
Western Cape?
Western Cape does not support.
Western Cape?
Not agree.
All 8 provinces have voted in favor. I therefore declare the report as agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. That concludes the business of the day, honourable members. The House is adjourned.